Welcome back. Now we have aura ability types, which now contains an effect context that's been souped up. It's a great deal better, new and improved, and now we're going to use it. Well, we're already kind of using it, but not really. You see, we're not using it with our new capabilities, these new variables. I'd like to set those. So where are we going to do that? Well, if we go back to our execCalc, notice we left a to-do there. Let's go to execCalcDamage.cpp, and we'll scroll until we find determine debuff. We have this function that determines whether we got a debuff, and we have that information in debuff, but here's our to-do. What do we do? Well, we'd like to set some parameters on our effect context, right? So how can we get that effect context? Well, we have the spec here. It's called spec. Why don't we take that spec and just call get context. That returns an fGameplay effect context handle. So we can store that in fGameplay effect context handle. We'll call it context handle. So now that we have the context, we can call functions like uAura ability system library is successful debuff. Well, we also want a setter. And I'm remembering now, I just made the getters. I didn't make the setter functions for these new variables. So I'm really going to have to go back and do what I forgot to do the first time when we made these getters. We should have made the setters. You probably did. So right down here under set is blocked hit, I'm going to go ahead and make a setter. I'll make it under set is critical hit. And this will be for set is successful debuff. So set is successful debuff. And just like the other setters, we're going to have an fGameplay effect context handle as an input, but it's a reference, a non-const reference, and the uparam ref allows us to put that as an input parameter in this blueprint callable node. Otherwise, Unreal Engine makes non-const references out parameters in nodes. So the Boolean will be called bin, we'll just say successful debuff. And we'll have other functions for setting the other parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and just make the definition here for set is successful debuff. And this is going to be similar to the other setters that we have, like set is critical hit. I'm going to copy the contents of that, paste it here. The difference is we're calling set is successful debuff on the effect context. So we'll say set is successful debuff and pass in bin is successful debuff. And now that this function exists, our execCalc can call it. So we can take uAura ability system library, call set is successful debuff, and pass in the context handle, and then pass in true because we know that it is a successful debuff. So we're going to follow this pattern for the other key variables for debuff. So we'll take aura ability system library, take set is successful debuff, and make the functions for setting debuff damage, debuff duration, debuff frequency, and damage type. So I'm going to go ahead and time-lapse the creation of at least the 3 floats, and then we'll talk about the gameplay tag, damage type. Okay, so pretty simple, just setting floats instead of booleans, but same principle here. Now, for the gameplay tag, I want a function that can receive a gameplay tag. So it's going to be a static void function called setDamageType. It's going to take a uparam passing in ref here. And that's for the context handle. So we'll put that there. But then I'd like to pass in a const f gameplay tag reference called inDamageType. So let's see how we'll handle this one. Let's go ahead and generate the definition. I'm going to copy the contents of setDebuffFrequency. And once we get inside here where we have aura effect context, if we type setDamageType, we don't have the function for it. So let's take a look at aura ability types. You might have handled this, but I didn't add a setter for it. So I'm going to make a void function here called setDamageType that takes in a t-shared pointer of type gameplay tag, so fGameplay tag, called inDamageType. And we'll simply set damage type to inDamageType. And now that we have this function in our ability system blueprint library, we're going to call setDamageType. And what are we going to pass in to setDamageType? It needs to be a shared pointer. Well, we can make one. We can make one from the inDamageType. We can say t_shared_pointer using fGameplay tag. I'll just call this damage type. And we can use make shared, not make shareable, make shared, which requires the type, so fGameplay tag, and we can initialize it with inDamageType. So this will make a new shared pointer that we can pass in right here. So now we have a function that can take in the damage tag, and we can pass it right into setDamageType. This can even be a const shared pointer. So now that we have this, we can go back and use our aura ability system library function. Aura ability system library setDamageType, passing in the context handle and damage type, which we have access to here. Now, in addition to those, we want to set those three float values. So we got the setters, set debuff damage, set debuff duration, set debuff frequency. We need to pass those in. But where are those? Well, if you'll recall, we set those. We set them as tag set by collar magnitudes. We did that in our ability system library. If we scroll all the way down, at least mine's all the way at the bottom, we assign tag set by collar magnitude for all the debuff things in the spec handle here. So we can actually get set by collar magnitudes from the spec. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take the spec and call get set by collar magnitude. Now we can pass in the gameplay tag, and I need the gameplay tag, gameplay tags dot, and it's going to be debuff. We have damage, duration, and frequency. We need to set those three. So we're going to get those three. I'm going to make a const float called debuff damage, and we'll pass in the gameplay tag debuff damage. I don't want to warn if not found, so I'm passing in false for that, and the default if not found can be -1.f. So I have debuff damage, I need duration and frequency. So const float debuff duration. And I'm just going to copy the function call, paste it here, change that tag to debuff duration. And I'll just copy the whole thing and paste it. And this one will be debuff frequency. And the tag will be debuff frequency. Now that we have those three values, now we can set them on the effect context. So we're going to say aura ability system library set debuff damage, passing in the context handle and debuff damage. And we'll also call the other two functions, set debuff duration. We'll pass in context handle and debuff duration, and frequency. So set debuff frequency, passing in the handle and debuff frequency. So that's what we do to do, that's what we do. So we fixed our to do, we've done it, and now this effect context handle associated with this gameplay effect is carrying this information through. And we can get it by the time we get all the way back into our attribute set. So I'm going to go into the attribute set, Aura attribute set, and we can handle debuff. So right here, when we're getting our incoming, we'll go to the incoming damage attribute. We're doing lots of things, including show floating text, right? We can also handle debuffs. We can check the effect context. We can say if, and we can call U or ability system library is successful debuff, passing in props.effect context handle because we have that. Then we can say handle debuff. And with that, I'd like to make a function because this is getting out of hand as well. So actually, look around. This place is filthy. Let's clean it up, right? Handling health and mana, we're only doing one thing each, but handling the incoming damage, we're doing kind of a lot of stuff. This is something that could be its own function. So what I'd like to do is handle incoming damage in its own function and handle incoming XP in its own function. So I'm going to close all but this. Oops, I closed all tabs. That's okay. Go back to the Aura attribute set and open the H file, scroll all the way down, and I'm going to have a couple more functions here. I'll put them in the private section. They're internal to this class, and I'm going to call this first one handle incoming damage. And this can just take a const f effect properties reference called props. All the information I need is in props. I'm also going to make a void handle incoming XP that takes the same input, props. So I can go ahead and generate two function definitions. Here they are. And I'm going to cut and paste them so that they're closer to post gameplay effect execute. So I'm going to search for post. Here it is. I'm going to put them right under it. Now handle incoming damage. That's going to be these lines of code here. So I'm going to paste them in here. Now we shouldn't have to change anything because we're calling it props. And we can replace those lines of code by calling handle incoming damage, passing in props. Handle incoming XP. I could be even more uber and control X instead of control C, control V, and paste it into handle incoming XP, and I can call handle incoming XP passing in, you guessed it, props. So post gameplay effect execute looks better, and we're handling incoming damage and XP in these functions, which are more isolated now. So when we handle incoming damage, if we got a successful debuff, I want to handle the debuff. So I want a debuff function. And I'd like that function to take some props as well. So I'm going to go in to the private section, make void debuff, which takes in some props, and it's going to handle what we do when we debuff. So we're getting closer. Writer gave me an inline definition. Thanks, Writer, for nothing. I'm going to put it back in the CPP file where I want it. And I'm going to call debuff right here. Passing in props. Debuff handled. Actually, no, it's not because it's an empty function. But now we're ready to handle it, right? We're ready to handle debuffs. And that's going to be the next thing we do. Now, I want you to start thinking about how we're going to handle debuffs. What exactly are we going to do? How are we going to handle debuffs? What are debuffs? Well, I know that when I cause fire damage, I want to burn my enemies. I want them to take fire damage every second for a duration, right? Every debuff frequency until we're done. So I want to apply a gameplay effect is what I'm trying to say. So think about it. How can we apply a gameplay effect from right here in this line of code? Well, don't go and implement it just yet, because the way we're going to do this is different than anything else we've done so far. And you'll find out in the next video of this course. So I'll see you then.